I just feel like readers are worth more than that. Clickbait is cheap and I hate it. And don't fluff up a story. If the story isn't good enough, it's just not good enough.
Hmm.
Know when to cut loose. You develop a tough shell. It's okay to
Hmm.
get rejected, and it's okay to ask why didn't this one work for you. You'll probably get some really useful feedback, and I mentioned that in the book as well. Is they pitch what they want to write rather than what the newspaper or magazine actually needs.
As a student, you're just like, I want to write and I want to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, wake up. We're in a capitalistic society.
And it's not about
Papers have
you.
to sell. It's
They have
not
to
about
sell.
you.
It's nothing to do with what you want to write.
First of all, welcome to my channel. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
and it's all things journalism and pitching. And since you're the pitching queen, I wanted to talk to you about that today.
Yes, I'd love to talk about it.
So, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Punteha van Terheyden and I'm a freelance journalist and the pitching queen. I've been a national journalist for the last 14 years and I specialise in true life stories for the newspapers and women's magazines.
Amazing. And how did you decide to get into journalism in the first place?
Um, I always loved writing. And when I was kind of getting ready to go to university, I actually initially signed up for physio. And then I got the place to do physio and decided, like, what the hell am I doing? This is not me. So through clearing, I got onto a journalism course, literally very last minute. And that was it. As soon as I was at university studying it, I just knew that's the one. And immediately kind of aligned myself with feature writing. I really realized in my course that I loved that. So within the first 3 months of my degree, I started lining up work experience on feature desks because I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And it just went from
Mhm.
there.
Feature writing can be very difficult, and like getting all the resources, talking to actual people, that
Hmm.
just takes such a long time. Did that ever intimidate you?
No, because the thing that I loved the most was real life stories. And in my own life, just personally, I was always reading non-fiction stuff, true life stories, autobiographies. I loved kind of hearing my friends' stories about various things and experiences. And my family are Iranian and they're a very kind of talkative, storytelling culture. So I think maybe it was just a bit ingrained in me. So yeah, like talking to people never made me nervous, and hearing people's stories was just always fascinating to me.
That's so funny because my parents are Turkish and I
Are
have
they?
the exact same experience. They talk so much for no reason.
So much. I don't know about Turkish people, but Iranians always sound like they're arguing as well, even though they're
Yeah,
not. A
it's
lot of
crazy,
passion.
especially for people from the outside. No, we're just having a normal conversation.
The first time my now husband came to meet to my parents' house, my mum and dad were in the kitchen just talking, and my Andy was like, "Why are they arguing?" And I was like, "They're literally talking about dinner. Like, there's no arguing. They just sound like they are."
That's so funny. I can relate. And what about your 10-point pitching plan? How did you come up with that? How much time did it take? How's the feedback so far?
Sure. I wrote the book in about 3 days because it was
Oh,
literally just writing down what I've been doing for the last 14 years, and especially in the last 5 or 6 when I've been freelance. Because I sat down and worked out what my pitching to commission conversion rate was, and it was 96%. The
wow.
96% of all pitches I send get commissioned. And I was just talking to my husband about like what it is that I'm doing, and I realized there was quite a clear pattern. And one of the things that I get asked the most, because I mentor kind of students and freelance journalists, and I'm always just, on hand to like offer advice about journalism. But the question I got asked the most was how to pitch. Like, why are my pitches failing? And so people would send me the pitches they sent out, and I'd realize I was very clear to me what the problems were. And also because of Lacuna Voices, which is the real life ethical magazine that I run, I get lots of pitches anyway, and it's the same pattern as when I was on a national magazine. There's a caliber of pitch that sells, and there's a caliber of pitch that flops. So I just wrote it all down. It didn't take long at all, but the feedback has been great. And there's a lot of kind of like university lecturers that I work with who are all very keen on the book. And yeah, they're just the feedback's been great. Have you read it?
I have read it. I binged read it in 2 hours, and
Oh my God,
honestly,
amazing. What did you think?
I loved it. I really loved how straightforward your language is. Of like, you're doing this wrong, and you, my friend, have to do this better. And I loved that. And just the way that you're just good at your job. Like, you know what you're talking about. I didn't have the feeling that I spent like 50 pounds on something that is absolutely BS, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really comprehensive. And I spent years as a commissioning editor for a national magazine, literally commissioning True Life day in, day out, reading maybe up to 400 pictures a day from freelancers and agencies and journalists all over the country and abroad. And you see very, you quickly become attuned to that. Like in the book, I say about there's a kind of algorithm almost. There is a formula that works. So yeah, it's I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. I'm glad that you binge
Yeah.
read it. That's really nice to hear.
No, honestly. And like pitching just seems like Pandora's box. It seems like something
Very
that
like
you can't.
abstract.
Yeah, it's very gate kept as well. Like as
Yes.
a
Yes, it
student,
is.
you just don't know.
Yeah.
And like, how did you get into pitching yourself? How do you even know all of these things?
Well, because I was commissioning editor, so it was my job to read pitches and buy stories or reject them. And I was always asking the same questions. You become very attuned to what make, especially when you work on a national publication, whether it's a newspaper or a magazine, you become very, very attuned to what makes a story, what lines you're looking for, what things do not work, what is repetitive, what is authentic, what is boring, what is not, what is my editor going to want. It just becomes its own language. And so when you read all those pictures all the time, you become hyper aware of what works and what doesn't. But before that, before I was even commissioning editor, I was the one who was pitching and selling stories to nationals. So you quickly learn by failure, basically, what works and what doesn't. But I was really lucky that when I worked at a news agency after university, so I was working at a regional news agency with an amazing, amazing feature editor. He was kind of former Fleet Street exec, and he was just sheer genius, like journalistic genius. So watching him work and working hand in hand, side by side with him for 2 3 years was kind of, oh my god, like invaluable, invaluable. So it started there. It was cemented at Take a Break, which is the biggest selling women's mag that I worked for. And after that, I went freelance. So I spent like 8 years at Take a Break, and then I went freelance after I had my daughter. So yeah, I was just pitching and selling. If I didn't sell, I didn't make money.
That makes so much sense. And I
Mm,
feel like work experience, you learn things like in one day that you didn't learn in 4 years of
yeah.
university. It's it's cruel and it's amazing at the same time.
It is. It's actually the most savage learning curve. And I think one of the things that I see a lot from student journalists is they expect to have a degree and get a job. But honestly, like the people who work on national newspapers and magazines, they have spent years working at news agencies and local newspapers. There's a whole rung that you have to go through. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's impossible. There are people who walk onto national newspapers because of their contacts, because of work experience they did when they were at uni, because of a training scheme. But the reality is, the majority of journalists you see on national titles have come the same route. They've done a news agency in a regional patch, they've worked on a local newspaper, and then after 2 or 3 years of doing that, then they may be equipped for working on a national. Until you've done that, it's very hard to understand how the whole news operation actually really works. Like on a feature desk, on a news desk, on a commissioning desk, on an opinion desk. What is the actual process? Until you learn the inside of that, it's quite hard to pitch because you don't know what the process is in house.
Yeah, it's the truth, but it's like it's things that no one wants to hear. Like we all want the shortcut. We don't want the
Yeah,
years of work and years of failure and stuff.
yeah.
And it's like this society is so instant gratification right now that
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it's just
agree with you.
difficult.
And journalism is one of those industries, like you said earlier, it's a bit gate kept. So the freelancers who are doing well don't want to share their knowledge half the time. Not all of them. Like there are lots of journalists that I'm friends with who are happy to share, and they are people who really know what they're talking about, and they're happy to share their information and their knowledge. But there's a whole stream of freelancers who are frightened to let the cat out the bag in case it kind of steals business from them. But I honestly believe the one thing you need to sell a story is for the story to be good. If your
Yeah.
story is good, people will buy it. The reason it will fail is because you've not secured it properly, you've not pitched it properly, or you don't even know what the main line is in that story. So yeah, it's formulaic, but you need to be taught the formula. And pitching can seem abstract, but it's actually not. That's what my 10-point pitching plan book really clearly demonstrates, and that's why I used all of the real life examples of pitches that I have sent myself,
Mhm.
just to kind of give you the real visual of what it looks like. And then there's the pitching templates and things at the end.
Yeah, yeah, they're super helpful to be honest, because like you have like 200 pages and you won't keep 200 pages in mind. So at the end, you have like things that you can actually go through while you're pitching, and that is
Hmm.
super helpful.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, yeah, absolutely. How do you know what to pitch where? So how do you go like, okay, this is The Guardian and this is
Yeah.
Elle.
So when I was working at the news agency, the first job of the day was for me to read all the newspapers, so all the national newspapers, broadsheet and tabloid, and pull out all the stories that might work for features. And that habit continued with me until today. So every single day for the last 14 years, I've read multiple newspapers and magazines. And what that does is your brain starts to sort this pattern that you don't consciously realize. But then when a story comes your way, you instantly know, oh, that feels like the Sun, that feels like the Mail, that feels like the Mirror. You instantly know in your gut who would like that, because you've seen that type of story, that type of headline, those sorts of pictures, this kind of court story, whatever. You've seen it in that newspaper or magazine so often that then, like if you see a bit of clothing, you go, cool, that looks a bit like a Zara dress, because you've seen it so much, you know its algorithm. And
Hmm.
that's the key, like reading all the newspapers and magazines, and getting an idea of how they do their features, how they respond to the news cycle, um, and their reactivity to ongoing news stories. That's really how I know. So when the story comes to me, I instantly know really where's the best fit for it and where I'm going to try and pitch it first.
That makes sense. How would you do that on a student budget?
Really good question. So I would pick a couple of newspapers that you can afford and spend 6 months reading them every day or every other day, and rotate the days so you get the different sections. Like for instance, the Daily Mail has female on Saturdays and Thursdays, and it has health, I think, on a Tuesday and a Thursday. But anyway, figure out which days have what sections, and then figure out the ones that are relevant to you that you want to read and learn about, and just pick a couple of days a week and read them, or alternate your papers. So one week you get the Mail, one week you get the Mirror, one week you get the Guardian. And you don't have to have them every day, but rotate your days so that you see all the sections across a period of, say, 6 months. I know that newspapers and stuff aren't cheap, but you can obviously read them for free online. A lot of them,
Hmm.
not all of them, but a lot of them, you can access their stories online. But it's good to bear in mind that the online team is different to the print team. So the quality of story you get in print is different to the rush job articles that are pushed out for clickbait every
Yeah,
10 minutes.
yeah,
So print, I think it's worth putting your money in print.
I totally agree.
Mm.
And when you have a story, you go like, these are the pictures, and I have to pitch that on this day to that person. Those were the two things that I learned from you that surprised me a lot. What
Hmm.
were your things that surprised you that you didn't think made pitching, but are pitching, in your opinion?
Um, do you mean when I was kind of like fresh into the job?
Yeah, yeah.
The importance of writing the pitch in the style of the newspaper or the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So the editor that I worked with, who was just a mad genius, Features Factory, when he was sending a pitch to the Mail on Sunday, it looked completely different than the one he sent to the Sunday Mirror. And realizing that that editor who gets that pitch is going to have one moment where he gives that pitch consideration. Sometimes he'll write it off within the first paragraph, won't even read the rest. So it's really important that when that editor receives the pitch, it feels like them, it feels like their editorial. And that's why, as well, in my book I talk about always writing your pitch to the style of the publication you're pitching. I always put a headline on mine, because you want that editor to instantly recognize and imagine that story in their pages.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me was, quite like, whoa, like I never would have thought of that.
That makes sense. Me neither,
Mm.
to be honest.
Yeah.
What has been your biggest lesson in your whole career?
Mm, a lot, a lot. But I would say just my kind of MO is to always be really upfront and honest with my interviewees. And I know that there are many agencies and freelancers that are not. They'll tell the interviewee what the interviewee wants to hear, and then they'll deal with the fallout of a complaint after print. But I don't operate like that. I I prefer to manage expectations and touch wood. In 5 years of freelancing, I've had one complaint about a story, and that wasn't my fault. That was to do with the headline the magazine put on it. They put it on the front cover and put a headline that the person didn't like. So, having a low complaint rate will make your life easier. So be honest with them, manage their expectations, and don't fluff up a story. If the story isn't good enough, it's just not good enough.
Mhm.
Know when to cut loose. Know when to say, right, I've had a chat with this person. I thought it would be a better story than this, and it's actually not. And I'm just going to let it go now. I'm going to tell this person I can't take it further, and just move on. Don't waste time trying to make a story work that just isn't working.
That's intimidating because then you have to talk about failure and accepting that you can fail and then deal with rejection. How did you learn to deal with rejection?
Because I had no choice. When you're sending out multiple pitches, especially at the beginning of your career, they are going to be rejected. Things are going to flop until you learn how to do it, until you really start to hone in on what is a great story and where is the best home for this. So dealing with the rejection was just part and parcel. And also understanding as well that commissioning and editing is extremely subjective. So, I've worked on multiple magazines and newspapers, and you can have an editor and deputy editor who edit copy in two completely different ways. You'll have the one editor who will read your copy and make minimal changes. Then you'll get the other one who will rewrite your intro and rip your work apart. And it's not actually reflective of your work. It's a subjective process. All creative processes are. So I think just you develop a tough shell. It's okay to
Mhm.
get rejected, and it's okay to ask why. Why didn't this one work for you? You'll probably get some really useful feedback. And I mentioned that in the book as well. You can always figure out really like why it didn't work.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's super important because sometimes you just don't want to hear the answer as well.
Yeah,
Or sometimes you think that someone didn't actually read what you sent them, even though they did. And I think that's a very nice thing to see that you get notes for a reason
yeah.
because people are trying to make you better.
I think so. And the one kind of the thing that I see freelancers do where they fall down on pitching is they pitch what they want to write rather than what the newspaper or magazine actually needs. The newspaper and magazines focus around two things: their readership and their advertising. The more readers they have, the more revenue they make from advertising. So if your articles are not being read, say it's online, they're not staying on the page, your readers are not staying, they're bored and they're bouncing off, that affects their revenue. So as a commissioning editor, what they're looking for are stories that their readers are going to read. That's it. That's the focus. So it doesn't matter what we as journalists want to write. What matters is what those editors want for their readers. So if you pitch it to their readers, if you pitch it for their readership, you pitch it to what they need editorially, then you're much more likely to succeed than to say, I'd like to write about Britney Spears's, 13-year conservatorship. Well, why? Why would this newspaper care? You have to think about the why it's important to them, not why you want to write it. So I think having the right perspective when you're pitching is important, and understanding that newspapers and magazines are full on businesses. If they don't make money, they fold. And so everything they buy has to be justified. Everything they commission, they're paying money for, they have to prove to their editor it's worth that spend. So your story has to be strong, it has to be unique, it has to be timely, it has to be exclusive. It needs to have all that kind of 10 point, the check marks in the book, basically. Um,
I think that's it. I think as a student, you're just like, I want to write and I want to do what I want to do.
yeah.
And it's like, no, wake up. We're in a capitalistic society.
And it's not about
Papers have
you.
to sell. It's
They have
not
to
about
sell.
you.
It's nothing to do with what you want to write, actually. And you only get to write what you want after 14 years when you go freelance. Like, that's the time at which you pick and choose the topics you want to write about. But at the outset of your career, you write what sells. you write what those editors need to fill their pages, and you find stories that are worthy of being told. So yeah, shifting the perspective from this flowery idea of I want to be a writer, I want to be a journalist, I want to do all these things. That's great, and you will get there eventually. But in the first instance, you have to cater to your customer, which is the editor and their readership.
Absolutely. And tell me about Lacuna Voices. How did you
Mm.
come up with that? What does it mean to you?
Oh, it means a lot to me. I've always kind of touted myself to be an ethical journalist, and I think pretty much everyone I work with in the industry knows I'm really robust on my ethical practices. And one thing I really loathe with the Fire of a Thousand Suns is clickbait. I hate being clickbaited. I hate clickbait headlines. I just feel like readers are worth more than that. Clickbait is cheap and I hate it. And after a few years of freelancing, there were stories that I believed were really, really worthy, but they kind of didn't fit the traditional archaic news values that the UK has, you know, and I felt that in a world where we consume our news digitally, and we care about human connection, we don't really care where that human being is from. We don't care about like their skin color. We don't care about what nationality they are. What we care about is the story they've got to tell. And that's why places like TikTok really explode, because there's no barrier there. There's no like archaic algorithm that stops this person from seeing that story just because they're in a different country. So it was kind of that idea of this is a story that's worth telling and I need a home for it that isn't biased against it because of something that doesn't really matter anymore. I don't know if I'm being too cryptic there, but the idea was that it's going to be a diverse, inclusive environment where all I care about is how strong that true life story is and whether it's worthy of being told. Whether it's anonymous, male, female, race, sexuality, none of it matters. Where they are doesn't matter. And actually, the kind of the premise of Lacuna Voices has proven itself now, because I've got readership all over the world, and the people who are looking for that topic will find Lacuna Voices. So it just goes to show, like with UK newspapers, the focus is on UK stories and UK people. And I understand, I know, I get it that news is regional a lot of the time. But what I'm saying is that in a digital world, it doesn't have to be. And yeah, that was kind of what forced me to do something about it. And the other kind of element of it was that freelancers can be treated quite badly by publishers. The payment delays, the spiking of copy and not paying for it, payment on publication, all these unethical practices that don't make any sense to me on a business or ethical level. I just wanted to change that, basically. So I just had to put my money where my mouth was and start Lacuna Voices.
That's beautiful. You just went like, I don't like this. So you know what? I'm just gonna do it on my own.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately, the national newspapers, there are many editors that are great and they do the right thing by their freelancers, but there are many editors who are not. I'm really lucky that in the course of me being freelance, I've kind of whittled out who are the ones that don't take care of their freelancers, and I just simply don't work with them anymore. But not every freelancer is in that position. Not every freelancer has all the contacts that I had when I left. So it's not fair really for a freelancer to be putting their food shopping on a credit card because they're waiting for thousands of pounds worth of work that
Yeah.
should have been paid to them. They filed the copy 6 months ago, but they haven't received the money for it. Like, this is completely unjustifiable. And I've been a commissioning editor and paid people on receipt of copy, so it can be done. It can be done. Like, the amount of copy that flops after you've paid for it is less than 10%, 5%, I'd say, on average. So there's no reason. You're either over commissioning, commissioning badly, or you're being unethical with your freelancers. I just don't see any justification for it. And that was a lot of the driving force for Lacuna Voices.
Yeah, yeah, that makes total sense. And what about endometriosis, so if
Mhm.
I'm pronouncing it
Yeah,
correctly? How does it influence your life? And I know you have been talking about this a lot in your articles and stuff.
yeah.
And it's not about the thing itself, in my opinion. It's just about you have something, some pain in your life that is influencing you, and you're still managing to do all the work. How do you do that?
It may look like that, but I mean, there are a lot of times when, because of this chronic illness that I have, this chronic pain, I have to down tools. I have to change around my interviews. Like right now, I'm sitting with a heat pad on because I'm in pain. I've just learned to unfortunately have to work and live around the pain. But it was one of the main reasons that I went freelance, because I was not being afforded the flexibility I needed to take care of my body. You know, the
Mhm.
solution was work 5 days a week, no working from home. It was completely unflexible and wasn't compatible with my illness. And I'd spent, you know, more than a decade working and being in pain in this industry, and I'd kind of had enough. And so now, if I need to take time off, I just do. If I need to rearrange an interview, I just do. I work from bed sometimes, you know, like I just lay on my back and work on my phone. I write copy on my phone. I just do what I need to in order to file the copy I need. And I've embraced the freedoms of freelancing. So I don't have to work from a particular venue. I don't have to work set hours. I can take time off at the last minute, and I'm still going 5, 6 years later. I'm paying all the bills, making money. It works. Like, I just felt like I had to embrace the good things about being freelance, because some people can get stuck in this must work 9 to 5, must work Monday to Friday. You don't. You don't
Yeah.
have to, unless you're shifting and going into an office to, you know, do some shifts in an office. You don't have to work any particular set of hours. And when you're chronically ill, you need the flexibility to say, I feel like crap this morning and I'm going to stay in bed.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's very powerful because we're on this treadmill and we're
Mm,
constantly going on the treadmill and
yeah.
like keeping a work-life balance, it it's just very difficult. Like even as a student, I find it very
Yeah.
difficult. What is your advice?
Oh, good question. I think giving yourself the right to want what you want, and know that um, there might be a period of your working life where you have to conform to some businesses' hours and locations and stuff, but there will come a point where you will feel experienced enough to say, you know what, I'm going to do this myself. Like, I'm going to go freelance. I'm going to start my own publication or whatever. And it's not as easy as I decide and I do it. But I think once you've got the right experience within your industry and you know your industry well enough, you're much better equipped to go off and do what you need. So there's a kind of, I feel like there's a there's this balance of grinning and bearing it and learning your industry. And then when you've got all the skills and knowledge and experience you need, doing it the way you want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so as well. And how do you manage all the freelancing things? So like taxes and having to deal with being independent. I know it sounds
Mm,
very obvious, but like
no,
as
it's okay.
students that are trying to get into freelancing, how do you deal with all of those things?
Again, a really good question. But I think being clear on what your hard knows, your hard limits are, is really helpful. So for me, my hard limits include titles that I absolutely will not work with. And you are entitled to change your mind. So you may start off working with someone and then just go, you know what, I just really don't enjoy this. Like, give yourself the right to say, I don't like this, I don't enjoy this, I'm freelance, I can do what I want, basically. But I mean, in terms of the practical stuff, I have right from the outset set a minimum target that I need to hit a month of stories sold, so that I know if I hit that target, I'm going to be okay. And if I haven't hit that target, I need to scrap. I need to find stories to sell. Um, and that will kind of dictate how much time you can afford to take off in the coming months and weeks and whatever. But I think give yourself time off as well. It's very easy to burn out as a freelancer because nobody is telling you to stop. There's no office hours. You are just on 24 hours a day. So give yourself some space and time to relax and just not work and not look at your phone. And in terms of tax, like at the beginning, I did my self assessments myself. It's actually sounds much more intimidating than it is. It's kind of box by box online. You just do it step by step. So just keep a record of everything, all of your expenses and receipts and incomes, but just be organized. So I've got like a spreadsheet that I put all my commissions on. So it's like dates, who commissioned it, what title, what it's about, have I filed the copy, when is it due, have I sent the invoice, what date did I send it, have I been paid, what date was I paid. Like, that's the basic commissioning form that I have used forever. And it just helps you keep track of what you owe people in terms of copy, when you might expect payment, when to chase payment with editors. And yeah, like now for the last few years I've had an accountant that does my taxes for me. There are loads of accountants out there, and it's not hugely unaffordable. You know, it's fine. Like, once you've been going a while and you've got an income, you can do it, and it's worth handing it over, to be honest. I guess those are probably my top tips, but key things would be have a minimum figure that you know you need to make and work your butt off to make it every month. Give yourself time off because nobody else is going to tell you go on holiday. Um, and give yourself the right to run your business how you want to run it. If you don't want to work with a newspaper or magazine, don't work with them. If you don't want to agree to payment on publication, don't. It might make it harder in the shorter term finding people to sell to because many of them are payment on publication. But if you have a business model that pays you your money when you're owed it, that's going to work out much better for you in the long run rather than waiting months and months. Like recently, I've waited 4.5 months, 5 months for a payment. And it's just,
Yeah,
a
insane.
nuisance. It's like my bills go out every month. Like I can't afford to wait 6 months to wait for a bit of payment. So, give yourself autonomy and the right to choose what you want.
Absolutely. I feel like I've noticed with people that went independent after being employed, just the mind shift of I am the boss now takes a minute. Of like
Yeah,
I
yeah, it
can I
does.
can actually decide what I want to do. Wow, that's
Yeah.
insane.
I totally agree with you. And one of the first business decisions I made when I went freelance was I decided that I absolutely will not chase stories from the national newspapers. So there are many freelancers out there who'll get the newspapers every day, find people in the press already that will have a good story to tell, and they chase those. I decided fundamentally I'm not going to do that because I've seen when from working on a commissioning desk that there are like 300 other freelancers doing exactly the same thing. And it's just a waste of time. So I decided right from the start, I'm not going to try and compete with agencies that have 20 feature writers all over the country. I am going to come up with my own ideas, generate my own features, and then I'm not competing with anybody but my own creative power.
Yeah,
So that was what I was my first decision, and I have stuck by it, and I'm so glad I have. Like
I
I'll
think
never
that's
look back.
beautiful. Very empowering. How did you get into ghostwriting?
So when I was working on a magazine, I had one of the senior commissioning editors on Penguin contact me saying, "Oh, I saw this story that you had this week in the magazine. Can you put me in touch with the person? We think they make a great book." And our connection and our relationship started there. And we eventually ran a competition together. It was a joint competition between the magazine and the Penguin to find a brilliant true life story worthy of becoming a true life book. And it began there. So it was really from contacts I made within the industry doing a staff job. And yeah, then I ghosted quite a few books after that.
I think what I can analyze throughout your career as well is how important it is to actually have friends in the industry of
Mm,
like not only getting paid, but actually being nice and understanding that these people are nice people and you want to hang
yeah,
out with them because that's how you get jobs.
absolutely. Like I think every single job that I've got in this industry has been because of that. And it's not like nepotism because I don't have anyone. I'm first person in my family to become a journalist. Like they're all Iranian, they're doctors and engineers. Like there's no creative side of our family in that way. So I was really just carving out a path for myself. And more than more than what you just mentioned, it was the fact that I would not take no for an answer. Would not take no for an answer. So like the first agency job that I went for the interview. They turned me down because they were giving the job to the son of someone they knew. I was like, oh my god, pure white male nepotism going on there, and that really rubbed me up the wrong way. So when I was driving home, I called them back and I just said, it's a bit annoying that you invited me in for this interview when you knew you were going to give the job to somebody like somebody's son. But whenever I call, you're always there. So do you need any shift work? And they kind of laughed at me, but they gave me the shifts. So that ended up resulting in me getting a staff job with them in the end. So I think as well with journalism, it's one of those industries where having some balls and having some tenacity and having some, showing some personality actually will help. Because they'll know that somebody like that who won't take no for an answer is going to do well on a doorstep. You're that journalist who's going to get that story because you're not taking a no
Absolutely.
for an answer. So, don't be afraid to show your personality and be confident. But like you said earlier, like being friendly and being nice goes a long way too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Every no is a maybe, other than sexual experiences, obviously.
Yes, yes, yes. I love that phrase. That's yeah, yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree with that more.
I love it. What are your goals for the future?
Great question. Um, kind of like what I'm doing now. I'm only writing stories that I love, that I want to write about. I'm working with publications I love writing for. Um, I'm diversifying. Every year I'm diversifying what I do. So, like now I build websites as well. I build and design websites too. I like doing copywriting as well. And I think as a freelancer, diversifying your income stream is the best way to protect yourself. Publishers will fold, newspapers and magazines will fold. So you can't rely on just a handful of publications to pay your bills. The more you diversify and the more you kind of use those skills you have as a creative to do other, tap into other industries like copywriting and web design and all that kind of thing, social media, just diversify. So I think I'm just going to continue to diversify and move more into a model where I'm not just writing for newspapers and magazines. Like
Mhm.
I'm getting those web design projects, doing the copywriting projects as well. Just gives you space to breathe, in terms of payment and money.
I love that. When you're employing someone, what do you look for? So let's say I
Mm.
just graduated, I'm looking for a job. What do you want on my CV or in my personality that makes you go like, yep, that person?
Mm. Really good question. So for me, if I'm like hiring for Lacuna Voices or when I was hiring, looking at candidates for the magazine, I always looked at their work experience. And what I wanted to see was local newspaper experience, local radio, any kind of work experience on a national. That to me said this person's got some drive and they've already beat lots of competition to get that work experience. They've got something about them and they will have learned something about how this industry actually works. So for me, the work experience side is important, but also looking at, if I was hiring for a feature writer role, like what do they know about true life? That I'd be asking that in the interview, like, what do you know about true life? What do you like about true life? Because hiring for the skill set is important in terms of topicality. So you might get lots of news reporters who are great news reporters, but they can't really turn their hand in a very beautiful way to true life feature writing. So yeah, I guess that would be important too. And personality wise, just somebody who's got a great attitude. They're willing to learn. They acknowledge they've got gaps in their experience, but they're willing to learn. Like that for me is, the potential of carving that person into an amazing feature writer is what I would always look for.
I love that. And I'll just give you a minute of free space to share
Hmm.
whatever I haven't asked you about or whatever you
Hmm.
want to tell a young writer out there. What would you like to share?
Sure. I think don't be scared of the hard graft at the beginning because it will pay off in the end. Cutting your teeth on, as they say, cutting your teeth on a local newspaper or a regional agency is probably one of the most effective ways to get your dream job um, on whatever title you want. And I know that there's a particular school of thought with freelancers who think that going freelance straight out of uni is totally fine and you can do it. And I don't disagree with that. I think if you work hard enough and you expand your experience enough, you will succeed eventually. But it is very much easier to have gone and got a staff job and learnt the industry from editors who've been doing this a long time and understand really how that editorial process works. You're much more likely to succeed as a freelancer and make a living wage out of it, and be able to pitch and sell stuff as a freelancer and live a life. You want to be a digital nomad writing articles from all over the world. You have to understand how the editorial works first, and it's not something I don't think is covered enough at uni. So I guess set your sights on your dream job and then go and talk to the people who are doing that dream job and ask them, what did you do to get there? I think people who work in journalism, especially, most of the time, they're very happy to tell you how they did it because they know how hard it is to do. So don't be frightened of approaching people on social media and just saying, oh my God, you've got my dream job. Like, what did you do to get there? What was your journey? Tell me your path. They will talk to you and, seek out resources from experienced freelancers, like the ebook that I've got lots of free resources as well. So I've got a free forensic pitching analysis clinic. So you just fill in a Google form and I'll tell you why your pitch flopped basically for free and figure out what you might be able to do to strengthen it and sell it. But there's lots of freelancers out there who will be happy to help you. And if you come across one that isn't happy to help, just draw a line under it. Don't worry about it. Find someone else who will help. There's plenty of us out there. So I guess,
Amazing.
yeah, just Figure out what your dream job is. Figure out what your interest is. Is it real life? Is it news? Is it sport? Is it opinion? Is it digital TV production? I mean, digital media or TV production? Figure out what it is actually. Once you know what it is you want to do eventually, or what neck of the industry you want to work in, you can figure out the path to get there. But don't be afraid as well to change your mind. You might set off thinking, I want to work for the Times, and then realize, no, actually, I think the Sun is much more fun to work for. It's okay. Like, don't be a snob about where you end up. The key is to enjoy that job so that you can withstand the stresses of it once you get
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely. So, thank you so much for the talk.
No
Honestly,
worries.
anyone watching, check out the Facebook group, check out all of your socials. So, like, check out all of Punteha's socials. I
Hmm.
will put them down. And the 10-point pitching plan. It's a bit pricey for a student budget, but it was well worth it. So, check that out as well. And
Definitely. And if you join the Facebook group, which is the Succeed in Freelance Journalism group, I often do flash sales and give codes in there. So you can get like 50% off the book and stuff. So joining the group, the private group, is worth it for that, if nothing else.
amazing. Thank you so much for
Okay,
your
no worries.
time.
Thank you for
It
having
meant
me.
a lot.
Okay,
And
great.
see you.
Bye.